Hi guys, welcome back to Step by Step with me, Shelby Church. Today's episode is going to be all about investing, mistakes I've made investing, things I really wish I knew before I got started, and kind of a beginner's guide on how to invest. So some of this information will maybe be basic to some of you guys, but I'll also just share some things that might be a little more advanced. Just overall, I still get messages from people asking about investing. I made a TikTok recently where I talked about how more men invest than women and how the statistics on my videos, like any video that's about investing, it is like 80% male audience, maybe 90% on some of them. And I just think that's really interesting. I think more men invest than women, and I'll talk about that a little more later. But I'm passionate about getting the girlies to invest. So this is really an episode for the girlies, or really for anyone, because it's not like investing is different based on your gender. It doesn't matter. It's all the same. But I just do find that a lot of my friends who are girls don't invest or are intimidated by it. And I'm always trying to be like, guys, it's not that scary. And I jokingly said, if guys can do it, then it's easier. But I'm kidding. It's I don't mean any shade to the guys listening. Love you guys. But yeah, we're going to be talking about that. For me personally, my investing journey, it kind of started when I was 21. I had always heard that, it's good to invest. And I actually wanted to when I was even younger, when I was 14, I was like, oh, I should do that. I've heard of that. And I remember my uncle telling me about stocks and you should buy stocks. And my dad said, yeah, just go into Fidelity and open an account. And me, a 14-year-old, I was too intimidated to do it. I was like, I feel like they're not going to take me seriously. Now I'm like, okay, who cares? But back then it was a little different. We didn't have all the apps where you can just so easily open a brokerage account. And when you're younger, I just felt intimidated. So I didn't really start investing until I was 20, 21, I think it was. Maybe, well, technically I think I was 18 or 19 when I opened a 401k, but I'll get into my big mistake on the 401k. It was major. But yeah, so I started investing then, and I went with a financial advisor for a while. And I've since realized that you really do not need one. I think in a lot of ways it can be a scam. Not completely. There's good financial advisors, there's bad financial advisors, but it's kind of like real estate agents. Anyone could get that license. Some are going to be a lot better than others. You got to be careful. So I had my money with a financial advisor for a while. And what I found is I wasn't really as motivated to invest when I had the money with the financial advisor. It was confusing to log into the account and view the investments. The return they got was pretty good, but it wasn't better than what I could just get with an index fund. So I'm essentially paying a fee for a worse return. That's what I found. And statistically, that is what happens when you get a financial advisor. They found, there's a study on this, 95% of financial advisors will not outperform the S&P 500. So that's basically what you're buying. If you're buying an index fund, usually it's a little bit of every stock in the top 500 stocks in the stock market. And it's viewed as a diversified investment because you're not putting all your eggs in one basket with Apple, for example. And then Apple, say it goes bankrupt, which would be crazy, but say that happens, it's okay because usually the other companies are making up for it. So basically a financial advisor, they rarely ever can outperform an index fund, and you're paying them usually a 1% fee is what they'll charge. So if you have $100,000 invested, it's $1,000. And that sounds like not a lot in a way, but once they get people's accounts growing to $10 million, it actually is a lot of money for them. They don't have to do that much. What a financial advisor is actually doing, they're picking some of those funds, but I don't think that's really that time consuming. And then it's kind of client management, just talking to them on the phone when there's something going on. From when I talked to Humphrey, when I had him on the podcast, he was a financial advisor for a little bit. That's sort of what they do. They kind of just reassure you if the market's down and you call. A lot of them will do a year, annual review. I know mine did that. And they also gave me some tax strategy for retirement accounts and things. So they can help with that, but also a CPA can just help with that. What I don't like about having a financial advisor is you're paying for a worse return. And that's why I feel like it's kind of a scam. It's what? So when is a financial advisor right for someone? I think if you're very high net worth and have no financial literacy. So I'm talking maybe like a pop star who's 16 years old making $50 million a year. They could benefit from a financial advisor because they simply don't have the time to learn, and they're probably too young to like understand all of this stuff. And so, yeah, they have like huge assets. They would probably want someone, looking over that. Or if you just have like a really complicated life, like you want to set up trust funds for your kids and things like that, or you want a succession plan, that, you could just get an attorney to do that stuff, but financial advisors help with that kind of thing too. So it actually seems better for wealth preservation than wealth building. I feel like it actually is worse for wealth building than just putting your money in the stock market, but that's my kind of opinion. For some people have different opinion, but yeah, if you have $10 million, a financial advisor will help you put it into different funds that will diversify it in like even greater ways. You might get a lower return, but for some people, that's what they want. Like if you were 60 years old, you might want a lower return. Anyway, going on kind of long about this, but basically you don't need a financial advisor, guys. And if you don't have a lot of money, frankly, they probably don't want to work with you. I know that sounds harsh, but like when I talked to Humphrey about it, he said, lowest amount you have to have is like 50,000 to invest. And really, they're not making hardly anything off that anyway. Like, they're looking for people who have hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. And if they have hundreds of thousands, they're probably thinking like, it's a long-term play. So I just don't think it's necessary, but I do meet a lot of people who are convinced that they need one. And I will say the one good thing about probably getting one is if you are someone who would be prone to panic selling, they'll probably talk you off the ledge. You've got this like buffer between you and being able to sell the stock. And that might be the most beneficial thing of having a financial advisor, or just having someone nudge you and be like, hey, do you want to invest more? So if you don't have, I guess, like financial discipline in a way, like it can be helpful. And also at the end of the day, if that's what it takes to get you to invest, it's still better than not investing at all. But I just think it's unnecessary and I don't think you really need it. Okay, so I had a financial advisor for a while. I left a couple years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and I've been getting a better return. I feel actually more motivated to invest. I'm more kind of tuned into it, and I don't freak out when stocks go down. I just am fine with it on my own, but I've also learned a lot about it. There's a lot of things when it comes to taxes and stuff, but I'll go over like what I know in a way that is hopefully not confusing. One last thing on the financial advisor topic. I think some people just want a financial advisor because it sounds cool, like a flex, like my financial advisor, my attorney. It's like they almost just want to sound fancy or something. But like, yeah, no, when I hear someone say like my financial advisor, unless there's someone with like a $50 million net worth, I'm like, you don't need that. Like you're getting scammed. That's what I think. I think, oh, that's a shame. That's a shame for the most part. Okay, so let's talk about investing and why it's so important. So it's really important because of the compound interest effect. Typically, if you're investing in an index fund, you'll get 8 to 10% a year. That doesn't sound like a lot of money, right? But when you consider the fact that on average, your money will double every 7 years, it's pretty crazy. And that's not even putting any more money in. That's just if you put $100,000 in the stock market, you forget about it, you come back 7 years later, it'll be 200,000 typically. Like there's no guarantees, but that's usually what happens with the historical returns and everything. And that is insane. And the big thing is, a lot of people are doing this. Every rich person I know invests. And if you're not doing it, you're gonna get left behind. Other people will. And then it's hard to compete when you want to go buy a house. You're competing with someone who's had 20 years compound interest of their investments. They're going to have a lot more money than if you have never invested. So that's really why it's important, is because those returns really add up, even though it doesn't sound like a lot per year. I mean, 8 to 10% is still really good. And over time, it's just crazy. And, I feel when I first started investing, I wasn't as motivated because the returns, the dollar amount is lower. 10% of $10,000, it's only $1,000. But after it compounds years and years and years later, eventually, now you're getting $10,000 a year additional that you didn't have to do anything for. Or if you have $1 million portfolio, you're getting around $100,000 a year. Like that's insane for doing nothing. Like, it's really crazy, and it just continues to go up. I mean, it can go down too, but on average, it's just, I think, really important to be in the game, especially when you're young, because if it goes down, you have time for it to recover. So that's really the big thing, is a lot of people are investing, and it's kind of like, if you're not, it's just going to be harder when you want to go to buy a house or these other financial goals you may have like a bougie wedding or go on some trip or whatever. It's just going to be a little harder, because as other people make more money, not to say we're all competing with each other, but people are kind of competing for the same resources. So if a lot of people like have invested and you haven't, your money will be essentially worth less, because you won't even really be keeping up with inflation. Quick break to thank Rocket Money for sponsoring this podcast. If you guys aren't familiar with Rocket Money, it's a personal finance app. They're known for helping you lower your bills, cancel unwanted subscriptions. They can help you set a budget. They can help you save. It's kind of like an all-in-one place to make your finances better. I really like using it for the unwanted subscriptions. Basically, they will show you what you're paying for, so you can see different things that you might have forgotten about, like streaming services. You sign up for a trial, you forgot. They make it easy to cancel. Like, you can just cancel in a few taps. They can also help you lower your bills by automatically seeing where you can save. So they'll check, your phone bill, your internet bill, and see if you can save on that. You actually don't have to make the phone call or do any of the customer service stuff. Rocket Money's negotiators will go to work for you to do that. Rocket Money's helped save customers up to $740 a year when they use all the app's features. And in total, they've saved customers over $500 million in canceled subscriptions. So a streaming service hates to see them coming. Rocket Money, by the way, has a bunch of free features, so you can try it for free. There is a paid version too that's a little more robust. It's got even more features. If you want to get serious about saving more and spending less and join the already 5 million people who use Rocket Money, again, just go to rocketmoney.com/Shelby and you can get started for free. Or if you want to unlock the more premium features, you can also go to rocketmoney.com/Shelby. Okay, thank you to Rocket Money for sponsoring, and let's get back to the podcast. Okay, but before we get into it, I wanted to quickly thank one of the sponsors of the podcast, Cure Hydration. If you guys aren't familiar with Cure Hydration, it's an electrolyte drink mix. And what I really like about it is they don't have any added sugar or artificial sweeteners. So you're not going to get that fake sugar taste, and they use clean ingredients. They use things like pink Himalayan salt and coconut water powder. I feel like it's just a cleaner way to hydrate. And really, when it comes to staying hydrated, it really is more than just drinking water. I mean, I've found when I go to play tennis, and if it's like a hot day, I'm playing in the middle of the day, I will be so fatigued after, even if I was just drinking normal water the whole time, because I need those electrolytes. If you are not replenishing your electrolytes too, like, you'll kind of get that fatigue, that brain fog. I feel like we've all felt it. In the summer when I'm in Palm Springs, like, you don't even have to be working out. Like, I need to be drinking this just to stay like normal. So with the Cure electrolyte drink mix, there's only 25 calories in each packet, so very low calorie, again, because there isn't any added sugar, and it's doctor approved and safe for the whole family, so adults and kids can use Cure. So they have a bunch of different flavors. They got like watermelon, lemonade I feel like is a classic. There's strawberry, kiwi, berry, pomegranate, really something for everyone. They found that 75% of Americans don't drink enough water or have enough electrolytes, and this is when you get those symptoms like fatigue, headaches, dry skin. I noticed for myself, my lips get really dry. When I stay hydrated, my lips are just like naturally a little more plump. So it's like more motivation I've had to actually drink water. They actually followed a formula that was developed by the World Health Organization to be as effective as an actual IV drip. So they're not messing around here. We're really getting rehydrated. And for step-by-step listeners, Cure is offering 20% off your first order. You can get that by going to curehydration.com/Shelby and entering the promo code Shelby. Again, it's curehydration.com/Shelby. I'll put the link in the show notes as well if you want to just click on the link, and let's get back into the podcast. All right, so let's talk about my investing strategy that I do. It is very well known, this strategy. A lot of people do it. It's, I would say, low to moderate risk. There's definitely some risk there when you're investing. There always is, but I would argue there's risk if you're not investing too. Like, there's really risk with anything. When it comes to investing, yes, the stocks can go down, and they do. They do, When you look at these historical returns, there will be years where it's 10%, 20% a year, and then negative 20%. it is not like you're just getting this steady 8 to 10% a year. It fluctuates a lot. And you look at, I'll put a graph on the screen if you're watching the YouTube video. Back in like the early 2000s during the dot-com bubble, it went down 3 years in a row. That's kind of scary. Like, say you bought in right before that, kind of unfortunate. But still, if you held till now, you would still be up a huge amount. So that's the thing to know, is that stocks go up, but they do go down too. And it's not just this linear, like 8 to 10% a year. It fluctuates, and that can be scary for people, especially if you're not used to it. But I get excited if it goes down. I put more money in. I'm like, okay, this is a good buying opportunity. And what a lot of people tend to do when they first start investing is they sell once it starts going down. They're like, oh my God, it's going to go down more. And that's really the worst thing you can do, because you're likely going to miss those days where you have the biggest gains. If you're trying to time the market and all that, I really don't mess with that. I just buy and hold. Every once in a while I'll sell a stock if I because I have some individual stocks. I'll sell some if I start to not believe in the company anymore. But for the most part, I'm just buying and holding index funds. So yeah, this strategy really that I use is buying index funds, dollar cost averaging in, and then keeping some money in a high yield savings account. So if you're not familiar with a high yield savings account, it's just a savings account where you get a better interest rate than your typical savings account. So like Bank of America, Chase, a lot of them, they'll get you like 0.01% interest, like terrible, like nothing. And then the online banks, it'll be right now, because it's always sort of changing. Right now, it's more like 3 or 4%. So say you have $100,000 in there, you get $3,000 or $4,000 a year just for holding it in there. Not as good as the stock market, but for your emergency fund, for maybe if you have a down payment you're wanting to make soon, it can be a good place to have it. I do have a good amount in a high yield savings account just because I like to have some cash for if the market goes down, I want to put it in. So that's what I do. But really, I keep most of my money now in index funds. So what is an index fund? I feel like a lot of people don't know when they're first getting started. And it is a portfolio of stocks. So different companies will make these funds and they'll charge you a very low fee, usually, to... An example of an index fund would be the stock VOO, VOO. This is an index fund that tracks the S&P 500, meaning it has a little bit of the top 500 companies in the stock market. And it's actually kind of interesting if you look at what exactly is in there. You can Google it for any of the index funds that you're looking into. VOO, for example, the biggest positions that they have in this is Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, I think Tesla's up there too, a lot of tech companies, and those are really like 5% each. And then all the other companies in it, like the top 10 companies are like 5 to 3% each. Then all the other hundreds of companies, it's like less than 1%. So it's very diversified. Like I said earlier, if one company were to go bust, it's such a small part of the portfolio, it's not going to have as big of an impact as if, you just bought that individual stock. So that's why I like index funds. I also like it because you just have the historical average and it makes me more comfortable to have that data. When I'm saying you can get 8 to 10% per year in the stock market, that's based on the historical data of index funds that track the S&P 500. Okay, it's not based on if you just buy Apple stock, because that would be totally different. It's more risky, it fluctuates more, it's more up and down. Really, any individual stock, you can't bank on getting that 8 to 10% per year return. You might get a really good return, you might lose all your money, like they can go out of business. That's the thing. So that's why I like index funds. Like, I just like the predictability of it. It's not like totally predictable, but for the long term, it feels more predictable. So that's what I do. And I put money in over time. So I said dollar cost averaging in. If you're not familiar with that, it's the idea of putting in small amounts each month. So say you have $100,000 you want to invest, you could put it all in the market today, or you could break it up into like $10,000 chunks that you put in each month. And statistically, they say time in the market beats timing the market. So really, you'd be better off just putting the $100,000 in beforehand, like as soon as possible. But honestly, I still dollar cost average in because it feels less risky. And I know psychologically, like, it just feels better, but like, I know that it's not better, but I like to do that. It feels lower risk. It's, if there's a bull market, like the market's really going up, you're way better off putting it in ASAP because it's going to compound. But I think it's fine to dollar cost average in. It feels less risky. So yeah, that's the thing though. Say you have that $100,000, you put it in at the beginning of the year and the market goes up 20%, you would make $20,000. Like you'd get that 20% return. But say you dollar cost averaged in, you wouldn't get that 20% return because you only had $10,000 in from the start. So you get 20% of 10,000 and then the 20% of like 20,000, it would be a lot lower return. So that's the thing. And another crazy stat is that if you miss the 10 best days in the stock market, they say your returns are much lower. Like it really comes down to 10 days. That's wild. That have the most movement. So I just think that's kind of crazy. And that's why they say you shouldn't try and time the market or panic sell, because if you miss one of those days, you're missing like most of the gains that you could get. I've even seen somewhere it was like if you miss the 10 best days, then your portfolio would be like 50% lower. So, or your return would be 50% lower. Sorry. So that's kind of crazy. So that is kind of the case for putting the money in as a lump sum at the beginning, but it's scary to do that because, there have been people out there who they put $100,000 lump sum in right before the dot-com bubble, and then their money went down for 3 years. I bet that didn't feel good. Yeah, that would hurt. That would hurt. So that's what I like to do, dollar cost average in. And now I have most of that money dollar cost averaged in already, but I still have some, like I said, on the side to put in if it's down. And yes, I should probably just like put it in already, but I don't know. That's just what I like to do. Honestly, that's just what I do. You can do whatever you want, whatever you feel comfortable with. And really the thing with investing is things average out over the long term. So, the biggest mistakes people make when they get started investing is just like panic selling when an index fund goes down. Like when a stock goes down, I view it as a good buying opportunity because over time they generally go back up. So that's what I do, index funds basically. And a lot of them have like very similar portfolios. So, VOO, and then there's a Fidelity one. It's like FXAIX, I believe. And it's very similar. It's like almost identical. There are some index funds that are more growth oriented, they'll call them. So they'll have a bigger allocation of tech stocks. So it's a little more risky, but also more reward potential. And I do think, if you're younger, I feel more comfortable having the higher risk ones because if it goes down, I have time to recover. And so I'd rather take that risk now. I almost feel like there's more risk in not taking the risk, for me at least, because, you would lose out. This is the time to do it if you're going to take the risk. That's just how I view it. But I'm not really super risky with any of my stocks. I mostly have index funds, and then I have some individual stocks like for fun. So if I see a good buying opportunity, I like to throw some money in there. One that I'm proud of is I noticed in, I think it was 2021 or 2022, it might have been 2023 even, Amazon had dipped down a ton. Let me see what I bought it for. So back in 2023 it was, Amazon had dipped down to $121 a share. And I remember thinking to myself, like, what the heck? Like literally everyone I know buys everything at Amazon. Like surely it's going to go back up. Like I just believe in it because I believe Amazon's not going anywhere as a company. And what happened was they probably had a lot of bad press. I think it might have been around that time that Jeff Bezos sold a lot of his shares. And so other people are selling off and it made the stock lower. I'm not really sure what it was. I forget. But now it is at $212. I'm up 70% on that. And it's been 2 years. So 35% a year. That's kind of crazy. I'm not buying any more now because I'm like, okay, it's already like run up a ton. It's gone back down a little bit too, but I'm proud of that one. I do some individual stocks just if I like have this gut feeling, but I put a very small amount in. Like with that one, I put in, I think about $6,000 and now it's $15,000 that I have in there. I put $9,000 in and I made 6,000 from it in 2 years. So that was a good one. Another one I did that I was like also kind of proud of is, I know Tesla's like a sticky topic right now, and I made a whole episode about it, you guys know, but I'll say I did this in the past. Okay, this was before we knew Elon was doing what he was doing. I went to that Cybercab event that they had in LA, and the next day the Tesla stock went down 10%. I bought not a bunch, but I bought a good amount, and it doubled in like a week or two. And now it's down a little bit, but I think I'm still up like 60% on that. So a lot of what I do if I buy individual stocks is just seeing that the news is reporting something that I don't feel is accurate. So like the news will be making a big deal out of, Tesla or whatever. It'll make the stock go down a ton when I know that they're still selling off the shelves or whatever. So that's kind of, if I'm doing an individual stock, kind of my thought process on it, but I don't do a ton of that because it is risky. I'm sure I've lost money on some too, but for the most part, I've made good money on my individual stocks actually. So when it comes to the actual investing, I really think that's all you need to do for the most part though, is the index funds. Like you can mess around with individual stocks if you want, but I would keep it a smaller part of your portfolio depending on how risky you want to be. If you're okay with the risk, then just know that it can go down a lot more. But yeah, you could maybe allocate a percentage to that. That's sort of what I like to do. Like I have 1% that I just swing trade, which is like trading really on gut instinct and not caring at all about like how long I've held it for or anything like that. It's a very small amount because I know it's risky to do that, and I kind of just do it for fun. Most of my money I just keep in index funds because I can't really stomach losing like 40% on a stock. Like it would hurt, I just don't want to do that. That's why I'm okay with like a lower return. Let's talk about some of the investment platforms that you can use, because I've used a bunch of them and they have pros and cons. So, you've got Robinhood, which is probably the most popular app for investing in stocks among Gen Z and millennials. But you've also got the brokerages that have been around forever, it feels like Vanguard, Fidelity, Charles Schwab. The biggest pro to going with one of those is they have in-person branches, so you can go in person. I actually did go with one of those big ones. I won't say which, just security purposes. I don't know. I don't want someone to try and hack in. Like, they're pretty secure, but you never know. I feel like it would just be kind of dumb to say which one unless I got a brand deal. Like, if the one I use came to me for a brand deal, then I'd be like, okay. But yeah, I would say the three that are most well known is Vanguard, Fidelity, and Charles Schwab. And I like that you can go in person. I like that you can call someone. You can get on the phone. I have gone in person before. I've needed to, and it's very helpful. And so for keeping most of my money, I just feel more comfortable doing that. Really the con is the interface isn't as good. Like the app they have for these companies, it's okay. It's just not as beautiful of an interface that makes it like really like easy to see your returns. It's a little more clunky usually, but I'm okay with that. So then, things like Robinhood or SoFi, I invest a little with too, because it's convenient. It's like my personal banking, but then also I can invest through that account. Like, I just like that it's all in one place. But I have Robinhood too. I have an account I opened a long time ago and still have some money in. I like the interfaces of these ones. I like how you can just so easily see the return you've gotten in the last year. They also have some like educational resources. Sometimes they'll like teach you stuff. And just in general, they make it the easiest. Like, if you're wanting to get started today and you're looking for something that's going to be the least confusing, it's probably going to be like SoFi or Robinhood or something like that. I'll leave my referral to these. If you guys want one, you can choose whichever you want. I mean, yeah, I think between SoFi and Robinhood, they're about the same in terms of how much I like the interface. I like them both. There's also Public and M1 Finance, also beautiful interfaces. Then there are things like Webull, if you've heard of that, and Moomoo. Those are really more for like traders, like people doing options trading, day trading. I wouldn't recommend that for a beginner because you're going to be kind of confused. So just don't. SoFi or Robinhood, Public or M1, that's going to be best if you just want to start learning and you don't want to put like a ton in yet. I feel like if you're getting more serious about it though, and you want to feel, I don't know, like your money is somewhere maybe safer, I just like having mine with an institution that's been around a little longer and that I can like walk into for help if I need to. So that's what I'd recommend. But basically what you do is you just download one of these apps or go on the website for one of the larger institutions and create an account. You fund it. Creating the account does not take long. I don't remember, like maybe 5 minutes. And then you do a direct deposit of money in whatever you feel comfortable with. I feel like the most important thing, honestly, is just starting. So if you just put $100 in today and just invest in an index fund and you start, I think that is a major milestone versus not starting at all, because you might be like, oh, well, it's not that much money. Like, what difference does it make? But if it gets you in the habit of it, eventually you'll put in a lot more. So I think it's just better to do that. And like, don't beat yourself up if you don't have a lot to put in yet. Like, building that habit is so important. So that's really all there is to it. You just go in and then you search for the stock that you want to buy, an index fund. You can see a bunch of them and you can Google even more. I'm not a financial advisor and this is not financial advice. This is just what I do personally. And if you learn a bit from it, cool. But I encourage you to listen to other resources as well and learn a lot about it. Like, don't just listen to mine, my podcast. But what I'm saying, you're going to find I'm saying the same thing a lot of people say, just index funds and dollar cost averaging in. It's what everyone says, honestly. And like, I learned it basically from like Graham Stephan, and major shout out to him, honestly, because I feel like that is how I was more motivated to not have a financial advisor anymore, just take it into my own hands and know that I don't need that, I guess. I mean, he really made investing a lot more popular. I feel like he doesn't even get enough credit for that, but like, there were no real like financial education YouTubers before him, and now there's a lot more, and I feel like he really pioneered it. So shout out to him. It made me really have the confidence to move away from my financial advisor, and I feel so much better about it all. And like, I'm getting the returns too, which is really awesome. So yeah, you'll see that's basically where I learned it. It's from Graham's videos. Go watch him, or Humphrey Yang. He'll they're saying the same thing. Everyone's saying the same thing. And some people have more risky stuff, more day trading, whatever. I'm not into that. I'm just not. Like, no, it's not my thing. Yeah, I mean, you may have heard people say, options trading and maybe selling covered calls, things like this. Just know it's all risky, and a lot of people just lose money doing it. So I wouldn't really mess with it unless you find it fun and it's like your for fun thing. But I do view that more as gambling than investing, because the thing with investing, like, some people might say it's like gambling, but it's a calculated risk. Like, it's not just pulling a slot machine. It is looking at these historical returns and saying, yeah, I think that this is probably going to get me a better return, and otherwise, you will lose money to inflation. I really think there's risk in not investing as well, is kind of what I'm trying to say. Like, if you just never invest, your risk is that your money will be worth less to inflation anyway. So I mentioned earlier that these index funds charge a small fee, and I want to talk a little bit more about that because I just like to know all the info about this stuff. So basically, with a stock like VOO, that index fund, they have what's called an expense ratio of 0.03%. So that's the amount that they charge to hold their stock. So if you have $10,000 of VOO, you actually pay $3 for that. So it's a very, very low amount, way less than a financial advisor who, if it's 1%, they'd be, $100. It's a small amount. If you really, really want to avoid it, you could just go in and buy what's in those portfolios yourself. But I just kind of like doing it with the index fund. I'm like, whatever, 0.03%. Like, that's so small. Like, that's literally almost nothing, I feel like. If it's $100,000, yeah, you pay $30. $1 million, it'd be $300. It is a small amount, but I guess that's something to know. You do have the option, if you want, to just buy the individual stocks in small increments, but I feel like it would take forever, like, to do 500 different stocks. Like, I'm okay with just paying the 0.03% and not having to do that. But really, like, all these index funds tend to have the expense ratio. So like for the Fidelity one, FXAIX, it's 0.02%. So it's a little bit smaller. So for every $10,000, it's $2. So it's this really, really small fee, but that's, kind of how they make their money on it. So now I'm going to talk a bit about mistakes I made when I first started investing that I don't want you to make. Okay, so the first one actually has to do with my 401k. So I didn't get into talking about retirement accounts in here. I was mostly just referring to if you open just a normal brokerage account. But retirement accounts can have great tax benefits. So especially too, if you have an employer who's going to match it, oh my God, do it. Like, so worth it. But for me, I'm self-employed, so I get a tax write-off, but I'm matching it to myself, so I'm still having to pay. All right, so here's a mistake I made that I think I'm not alone here, but I feel so stupid. It's like almost kind of embarrassing. But basically what I did, I opened this 401k, and this was really the advice of my tax professional. So I didn't have a financial advisor at this point, but yeah, my tax CPA at the time, I don't have the CPA anymore, but they were like, oh, you can lower your tax bill if you open a 401k. So I did it. I was like, yeah, retirement, like that's probably good to do. It feels so far away, but like, sure, I know that's like a responsible thing to do, so I'll do it. And I was like feeling so good about it, like, oh, I opened this 401k, like I got the money in there invested, great. Well, I didn't actually have the money invested, and I think a lot of people make this mistake and they don't know it until a few years later. Even I put the money in the 401k account, but I never went in and selected a fund. I never picked a stock. And this is the thing I think where I got confused is if you're at a big company, sometimes they will pick the fund for you and you don't really have a choice on what you want. So I guess that's why I think I just thought like, oh, that's how 401ks work. It's just automatically invested. But no, it's not. If you're self-employed, if you have your own 401k, like a solo 401k or something like that, it's not. You have to go in and pick the stock. And 401ks are really, they're confusing a lot of the time. Like the one that I had, it wasn't through like a Charles Schwab or a Fidelity or something. It was from some random company I'd never heard of that my tax person, they probably got a kickback. Let's be real. I don't know. But like, I was like, why did they put me on this like shitty website that is so confusing? And that's why I didn't invest in it. It wasn't clear on the interface that I wasn't invested like I thought I was. It was like very odd, and you had to call to actually put the money in. Everything to do with that 401k I couldn't actually do. I had to like call and have them do it. So yeah, years later I realized it wasn't actually invested, and that's a big deal because a few years at the beginning of your investment journey is like a crazy amount down the road when you think about how it compounds. Like it's the difference between hundreds of thousands of dollars, really, like having a few more years in the market. So unfortunate that I didn't have it invested, but learn from my mistake. If you open a 401k or really any account, investment account of any kind, you don't just put the money in and walk away. You have to make sure that it is invested in some kind of fund. Otherwise it's just sitting there, not getting anything. So yeah, that one kind of hurts. It's kind of embarrassing, but I'm like, whatever. I was 20. Like, I didn't know any better. Obviously, if I knew better, I wouldn't have done that. No one explained it to me. They don't teach you this in school. My parents didn't teach me this. Like, I just had to learn it along the way. So learn from my mistake. Don't do that. So the next mistake I made was not understanding how investments are taxed overall, and that there's, this big benefit to holding long-term versus short-term. And I've talked about this in videos before, but I didn't know this for a long time. I want to say I didn't even really learn this until COVID, because that's when I started more messing around with individual stocks. But essentially what it is if you hold a stock for a year or longer, you pay a lot less in taxes on it. It all depends on your tax bracket, but the more you make, the more savings you'll have. So basically, when you hold for a year or longer, it's considered long-term capital gains. Like any money you make on that is long-term capital gains. Or less than a year is short-term capital gains, which is taxed as ordinary income. It's just taxed however you are normally taxed, whatever bracket you're in. So if you're in the 35% bracket or the 37% bracket, you're going to get taxed on it at that amount. But with long-term capital gains tax, the brackets are much lower. In fact, the first $48,000 of long-term capital gains is taxed at 0%, or the first, $48,000 you make, 0%. So if you're just now starting out in your journey, you're like in college, you have not an income really even because you're in college, but maybe you have a side hustle or a job, the money you're getting in, if you sell, you're not even getting taxed on that if you're making that little per year. Now you might get state tax if you live in a state with state income tax, but federal tax, which is usually the higher one, right? you would get zero. So that is pretty crazy. Where there's really a big difference is if you're in the like $250,000 range of annual income, or really like 120,000. So basically from 48,000 to about 530,000 when it comes to long-term capital gains tax, like that's annual income, right? You are only taxed at 15%. So if you make $100,000 a year and you hold the stock for longer than a year and you sell it, it'll only be taxed at 15%, where your ordinary income would be taxed a lot more. At that bracket, it'd be what, 24 usually, 24%. And then I think once you're in the $200,000-ish range, you're more at 35%. So you save a lot by holding long term. And I think the reason is they don't want people to be just constantly trading like this. Like, think about it. The economy, that might mess with things. Like, it would just be so chaotic. People having their money in the stock market and holding long term, it kind of props it up. And I think that's why there is that tax benefit. They don't want people like constantly selling. And I think it keeps people from panic selling, because we would have even crazier dips if there wasn't that benefit. So it's kind of crazy, and it really makes you think about how important, in my opinion, it is to put money into the stock market. Because like I said in that one video, I made $100,000 passively, and the fact that I'm taxed less on that than the money that I freaking worked hard for, I'm like, that's crazy. That is so crazy. But okay, whatever. I mean, if that's the game, I'll play it, you know? And so that's why I'm always trying to like invest more, because I mean, the more you invest, really the more obviously you can make, but like the more you can make with paying less taxes too. So like it just has an overall even greater effect on your wealth and the money low key that you like work for. That's a mistake that I learned. I did sell some stocks like during COVID that I didn't hold for a year, because I was like, I didn't really know that yet. And then I was like, oh shit, I shouldn't have sold that. It was going to go up more anyway. Like, you know, probably only made 20% on something and I sold it. Well, for it to really be worth it, I probably should have made more on it. You know, I think there can be times if you buy an individual stock and it doubles and you don't think it's going to go up anymore, like you really have a conviction that it's not going to, you could just sell it and pay the more in taxes. You're still going to be at a net positive there. It's really if it just goes up for a little bit, or if you would just be buying back in anyway, it's like, why would you sell and pay the taxes when you could just hold it? So that's a thing. And really, I feel like the last mistake was just not trusting myself to invest and using a financial advisor. Like, that was a mistake. I spent money on something I did not need and probably got me a worse return. Like, I guess I spent a lot of time just feeling like, honestly, because I'm a girl, like, I don't know. And I know a lot of girls feel that way, but this is not something that guys are better at even. Like, actually, there are studies that girls are better at investing. Honestly, with my individual stocks that I do mess with, my portfolio does well. It does better than my index funds. So maybe it's true. I get more like 30% with that. And I think some of that is just noticing these female-oriented companies that Wall Street will undervalue because they don't notice, you know? Like, we'll notice first, all the girls listening, that Uggs are becoming popular again. And then you can go buy stock in Ugg. I didn't do this. This is just like a random example. You know, Wall Street won't notice that for a long time because it's a lot of men. There are women there too. I mean, Martha Stewart, she used to be on Wall Street. Shout out to her. But this is just an example. I don't know if you can buy stock in UGG, but this is something I would do. I would notice these things. Like, it's usually a bit delayed. What'll happen a lot of times, I'll notice something is trending. People are really buying something. Like Tesla was one that I noticed. When I bought it, I was like, it's like an Apple product. Like, it just works so well. It's going to do well. But all the media about it was very negative. People were shorting the stock and it ended up doing better. I also noticed that like it was hard to get one. You had to wait 2 months for one. Like, so many people were ordering them. Once the media though starts to overhype it, that's when I would probably sell if I was doing more swing trading or short-term investing. I don't know. All of this is just to say, like, I didn't trust myself to invest. I was like, I don't know, like, these guys, you know, they studied it. Like, they must know that they live, eat, breathe, sleep this. They must know something I don't. And they really don't. No one has a crystal ball, you know, like they don't, you know, they can do all these fancy things, but we've got the data. It doesn't beat index funds most of the time. So you don't really need it. And I wish I would have just like trusted myself more. I think part of it too is just like when you grow up, I think more parents talk to their sons about investing. Honestly, I don't think my parents really did, but I think that is more common in general than daughters. And also your socioeconomic background. Like, if you grew up rich, doesn't really matter if you're a boy or girl, like your parents are going to like probably open a brokerage account for you. Like I hear of these people who their parents like opened it when they were the day they were born, or one of those college funds or whatever. And I'm like, wow, that must have been nice. I feel like I had to learn all this stuff on YouTube, but that's okay too. And it just makes me so angry. I'm like, why aren't we investing? I feel like there's a lack of education from a young age for like poorer socioeconomic backgrounds, basically. And I wouldn't say I grew up poor, but I didn't grow up rich. I grew up in like the lower middle class, like working class. Like money was an issue. We had tight months. Like we talked about it. I was aware, like that was kind of the thing. Like we had food on the table. We had what we needed, but we didn't have all the things in the world that we wanted. And we knew we needed to always be cutting back, always being careful. So that's kind of what's made me, I guess, financially conscious. So I'm actually pretty grateful that I grew up that way, because it made me, really value like investing and like being careful about this stuff. So now I don't actually have to be as careful about it, technically, but I still am pretty careful relatively. But yeah, doesn't that just get you fired up though? If you're in one of those statistics like that doesn't invest as much, doesn't it make you go, what the like, why? It really gets me angry sometimes thinking about all the girls who like don't invest. I'm telling you guys, you're getting left behind if you don't, because the guys are, based on my video finding, like my analytics. And this is no shade to guys, like good for you for investing, honestly, like good for you. I just really think that more girls can do it, and it's not scary. It doesn't have to be intimidating. And once you start, it's really not so scary. So I hope this got you pumped up to get started on your investing journey. Again, not financial advice. This is just like some information of pretty much what I do. And I really think the best thing you can do is just start, even if with a small amount, because how you manage your money now is how you'll manage it if you have millions of dollars. That's why we see those lottery winners come into a lot of money and they lose it all. And then we see people who come from nothing and they make millions or billions. If you aren't investing now and you think, oh, well, that 10% of 10,000 is nothing, well, then you're never going to. Like, you're never going to have the discipline if you make like millions of dollars, then you won't have the discipline. I don't know. And I think once you start to see the returns, it's so much more motivating too. Like I'm always like way more excited now to put money in, because I'm like, I know how it can be. Like I've seen it with my own account. So it's more exciting. I'm like, it's real. It's one thing when you hear about it and you're like, yeah, okay. And the first year you invest, I will say too, it's so slow. It's so like, oh, cool, I made 1% more in a few months. It feels like nothing. Or like if you invest in your first year, you actually lose money. You're like, why the fuck did I do this? But you just have to hold, because it will go up later, basically. Like it actually does suck though if that's when you start investing, it immediately goes down. It's very discouraging. But if you can have the motivation to put more in, it probably is a good time to put more in. But because it's down, and that's the time to put money in. But yeah, that is kind of my philosophy on investing, and I hope that some of you guys start, because it's not scary, it's not intimidating. Although I will say, people always say don't invest what you wouldn't want to lose. I mean, I definitely have money invested that I would be like sad if I lost it. In the short term, I'd be okay, is the thing. So like, don't invest your rent money, right? Invest that like extra money that you didn't spend on something, a vacation, that money that you're saving. You want to make sure you have your emergency fund and then start investing, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's what I would say. Don't invest money that you really need in the short term, or that is just going to like really mess you up. And short term could even be 1 or 2 years. Like if you think you're going to buy a house and you want to have that money in a high yield savings account. But yeah, that's my philosophy. I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. I'm just passionate about this topic. I find it interesting now. And I will say it's like kind of boring at times, like taxes and stuff, but it's exciting when you see like, oh, you can make good money from this. Like you really can. So you guys, I hope that this was helpful in some way. All right. That's going to be it for today. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.